Wouldn't it be cool to live off the grid and actually make money while you're living off the grid? Hey guys, I'm Joe McCall and I got a special guest with me. His name is Jaymie Friesen. I believe I got his name right. And I've been following this guy for a long time now. Finally got a hold of him. Somebody on his team reached back out to me and said, hey, what's up? You know, I said, hey, I want to talk to this guy, Jaymie, because he's doing some really cool things. So a lot of you guys know in my, who have been listening to my podcast for a while, I've been doing a lot of land investing where we buy vacant land and we flip it for a profit. Well, I saw one of Jaymie's ads and it was really unique because it was like, it was not an ad directed necessarily to the real estate investors. Like you and I, most of us listening to this podcast are, right? But it was directed to people who want to make money living off of the land, people who want to get off of the grid. So Jaymie has a company called Living the Off-Grid Dream. I believe I got that right. Is that right, Jaymie?
Yeah.
Okay. And he teaches people how some really cool things. I've already shared some of your videos, Jaymie, to some of my friends and family out in San Diego when I was out there last. And they own like a 45-acre ranch in the hills of San Diego. And so this is really, really fascinating because for a couple of reasons. I wanted to get Jaymie on because some of you might be interested in living off the grid. How do you, number one, survive and eat, right? But also, how can you actually produce money from the land that you're living on, all right? But also, this could be something, guys, if you plug into what Jaymie's doing through his YouTube channels, through his Instagrams and all of that, this could be something that you could help your buyers, the people who are buying your land, actually learn how to do on their own as well. Or it could be you're putting yourself into the mind of the buyers. What are these guys looking for? The people that want to live a sustainable lifestyle off the grid, off of the land. What are some of the things that those buyers are looking for? And how can you actually now maybe look for land that buyers like Jaymie are looking for? So I hope that makes sense. Jaymie and I just met like 5 seconds ago. And I said, hey, man, I'm so glad to get you on my show finally. And I want to save all of my questions for when we actually hit the record button. So Jaymie, good to meet you, man.
You too. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So you got this company called Living the Off-Grid Dream. Will you talk just briefly about how did you get into that? What is it that you do?
Yeah, I mean, it started with the lifestyle perspective, like you were chatting about. I think for me, at an early age, I was probably about 13 or so when I figured out that the education system wasn't exactly for me. Ended up dropping out in grade 11. And, from there, going through some mental health struggles and things like that, it kind of was Pandora's box to realizing that we could probably do a little bit better with our healthcare systems, with our food systems, everything being sprayed with poison nowadays, and just even financial systems, a little bit of everything. So I figured instead of sitting around and complaining about it, like most people do, that I'd go out and try and figure it out and do it better, do a better version. So that, to me, what that looked like was buying a large plot of land and trying to go and do that and kind of exit those systems a little bit and just live a healthier, more down-to-earth lifestyle. But I still came from a business background. I've owned 7 or so companies in my life and sold some and flogged others, and it was so I approached it with more of a business and like real estate investment mindset to be able to make it make sense, because you see a lot of people come out and try and do this and just go bankrupt because they don't have the money to begin with. So how could I start from nothing and use kind of my business acumen that I gained over the years to be able to make this make sense from the get-go financially, to be able to cover its own costs so it can grow under its own budget. So during COVID, my previous business went under, had to bankrupt it, and my brother had sold his business, not for very much. It gave him a couple grand a month kind of thing to live off of for a few years. And we were like, okay, what do we do now? And we decided, this is something we've always wanted to do. So let's just stop beating around the bush and trying to start these other businesses to pay for it. Let's use everything we've learned and go straight at it. And we ended up with 160 acres of cheap, undervalued mountainous terrain. And we put together a plan, and we used the Burr Method, which I'm sure most people are familiar with listening to this, but we applied it to rural land. We didn't see that happening very much.
Oh, so just a sec. So What state, Jaymie, did you buy this land?
We're actually in BC, Canada.
Okay, cool. And
yeah,
so
although I should say that we have 450,000 people in our audience between email list and social following, as well as over 8,000 clients now. So and most of them are in the States. So we work very heavily in the States, and most of our stuff is actually easier in the States because Canada's financial systems are much more restricted.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So then you said the Burr method. Do you mean the BRRR or whatever R's there are strategy?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So buy, rehab, refine. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance.
And repeat.
Yeah, exactly. So for us, we kind of saw people doing that, and the way the numbers worked, we're kind of looking at it like, okay, we know people in our area doing that, and we live in a pretty expensive area in BC. So we know people buying houses for $1 million that they're renting them out for $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month or something like that. And after you pay the mortgage, you're left over with $500 of profit every month. So we looked at that and we're kind of like, that's kind of insane, because we could actually take the same $1 million, put it into a property like this. We actually bought our property for about $215,000, and now you're not limited to just a little square lot in town. We have no zoning, so we can build anything we want in any quantities. We could have 1,000 rentals here if we wanted to. Yeah. So we started doing rentals, and we were within 7 months we were doing $30,000 a month off the property.
What kind of rentals?
Through rentals, through Airbnb rentals. These are just glamping tents. It was just glamping. That's it. Now we're reinvesting that to build more year-round infrastructure because of our climate, where it's negative 38 degrees in the winter kind of thing. We're kind of stabilizing revenue and increasing it by doing that, and reinvesting in cabins that are insulated and more stable infrastructure. But we saw that before going into it. We're like, we could buy land for $200,000 and make $30,000 a month with it, instead of buying something for $1 million and making $500 a month with it. And that's how we kind of ran with it. Yeah,
I love it. And so talk about what does off the grid mean? Maybe somebody out there listening doesn't know, what does off the grid mean?
Yeah, honestly, we got a lot of confusion with that. People hit us up in the comments. They're like, you guys got internet, you're not off grid. Off grid to us, we work with any rural land. It actually doesn't even have to be off grid. Off grid generally would just mean that there's no power and water hookups. That's it. But for us, we're completely solar powered. We have a drilled well and installed all our own water systems. And then we use Starlink for internet. So we pretty much turned something completely barren. There will never be hookups here. There will never be, power lines ran to this property. But that doesn't, honestly, in a lot of cases, it's easier to start with something that's not fully off grid. Honestly, we've just kind of used it as a keyword term because people think it sounds cool. But we work with all types of rural land. Yeah.
Okay. So you're off the grid, which means you don't have power or water. So you use solar. When you going into this and you bought this huge property, I wanted to ask something before that. Were there, like in Canada, like we have in the US, you don't have any restrictions from an HOA, but you probably have some restrictions from the government, the local government, the county government, or whatever, right? Do you still have to get permits when you cut a road in, or you bring in utilities, or you start building structures and stuff like that?
So it all depends on zoning. So if you're with more traditional zoning, residential, commercial, rural land zoning, things like that, our zoning is pretty much exactly the same as the US, just has different labels. But what's under the labels are usually exactly the same. Obviously, it changes state by state, county by county, a little bit. But for us, we actually made a map because we have so many clients, we made a map of all the no zoning properties or unrestricted land zoning properties, there's multiple names for it, in all of North America. So we basically mapped all of that out, so we know that these are all the properties that we can go to and do pretty much whatever we want on, which is included in our programs and stuff. But so we've contacted every single county office in the entire US to figure this out. And everyone's different. So in our area, all we have to do is pull permits on building the structures. Also, basically, and they cannot say no. So we, like I said, we could do 1,000 structures here, and they can't say no. They just have to make sure that it meets the building code. And we can, so that, and that's pretty much it. Like, we can build roads with no permits. We can install power and water and all that stuff with no permits. We can have any type of business without permits. You don't need, we could do anything here. You could do farming. You could, there's no bylaws at all. You could have a rave until 5 a.m. You could turn it into an events ground. You could do legitimately anything, and you don't need a business license at all. You can just, anything goes. But other areas, it's even easier. Like in the States, there's many areas that you actually don't even need to pull building permits. So we've kind of documented all of that. So it varies a little bit, but a lot of our clients are also doing this with rural land. There's a lot of loopholes with certain land zoning types where, you know, many rural land zones, you're allowed to have, you know, 3 to 5 campsites. And if you're allowed 3 to 5 campsites, then you could use a modular structure loophole and park a couple tiny home on wheels in there for rentals and that kind of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of loopholes and workarounds that we found.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about the different ways you can make money with rural vacant land. I think of glamping as the first thing I think of. Glamping, for somebody that doesn't know, right, is just kind of like nicer camping, where maybe you build a platform for them and they can put their tent on the platform, right?
Yeah, it offers some amenities. So a big thing for us was amenities. Was we kind of have a rule of thumb of like, if we're going to go the rental route, you can go anywhere you want, but the farther away from population density that you are, the more wow factor that you need to attract that person. You could do, like, they have ice hotels like way in the middle of nowhere. They have desert oases that are in the middle of nowhere that charge $1,000 a night. Yeah. So it's all possible. It's just how cool can you make it to attract somebody to come there. So for us, what that was we put up a teepee. My brother and I are status Indian, so we kind of had that theme, and our elders come out and we do work with them here. But we had a sauna, we had a cold plunge, we had outdoor showers, and that was kind of, and we are about 15 minutes away from a river that's beautiful, and people float down it and stuff like that. So that was enough to get people to drive 6 hours from the nearest city to come and stay for the weekend, which is quite a feat, especially in Canada, because in our population of our entire country is the same as like California or like the city of New York or something like that. Like, it's like one of your guys' states is our whole country. So your guys' population density is way higher, which opens up markets for you way further than what we have here.
Nice. I love that. So, okay, what are some of the things that you could do to generate income on your land?
Yeah, we run everything. We basically put all our ideas into a cost benefit analysis, and then we say, okay, how much does it cost to set this up versus how much money are we going to make on it every month? So generally what that points to is glamping. So setting up like some bell tents, they cost $3,000, and you can set them up in like 20 minutes, and people really like them. You put some twinkly lights on it. It's a really cost-effective way to get somebody in for a rental. For example, a lot of people be like, oh, I want a yurt. Well, a yurt costs 30 grand and you can rent it out for $250 a night, or a bell tent costs 3 grand and you can rent it out for $200 a night. So there's certain things that make a lot more sense and is not going to blow your budget, which I think that strategy is definitely one of the major things that we specialize in helping people with. Second, it really depends what you want to do. I mean, we have people doing cabin rentals, glamping stuff, campsites, long-term tenants, meaning like a tiny home community. We have people who have bought campgrounds and turned them into communities or just started from scratch. Any type of farming. That could be orchard, like perennial orchard. That could be cattle. That could be, laying hens. It could be whatever. Storage space, event space is actually a really big one, is renting it out for event space. We have someone come up here and they pay $15,000 to come stay for the night and just use the property. And that's when we hardly had anything on it. If you think about like wedding rental rates, our offer for wedding rentals is that for the same price that you pay a nice golf course to go there for 4 hours, we'll let you come here for the whole weekend. And you can also include accommodations, because otherwise all your family's going to have to spend another $15,000 on their own hotel costs. So if you want to have a more rustic style wedding, you pay the same thing. You pay $30,000. You get the whole weekend. I don't care. Do whatever you want out here. So that's actually a really big one as well.
Yeah.
So we have clients doing a bit of everything. A lot of retreat centers as well. I really personally like the glamping / event center as the first starting one, because you're stacking functions. You're building housing, even if it's only temporary, which you need no matter what you want to do. If you want to start a hobby farm after, you're still going to need live-work exchange people to come stay there all on season and help you out. So you always need housing.
Yeah.
And if you do Airbnb rentals, you're already installing all the infrastructure that you need to do event rentals. So then you're diversifying your income a little bit. So I really like that as a starting model. Farming is harder and longer term. Harder to automate, all that kind of stuff. So from my perspective, that wouldn't be the first thing that I start with, although we are trying to prove that model wrong and trying to prove very specific ways of farming specific things that would be able to have a good return and be relatively easy to automate to the point that an investor would be interested in that model as well.
I was just in San Diego visiting my mom, and they own a ranch. It's about 50 acres in the hills east of San Diego in an area called Jamul. And it's a really desirable area because it's in the hills, but they have a flat meadow in the middle of their property. And they've been there, they've owned this property through the family since the 40s. And but anyway, I saw a video that you did on YouTube. You were interviewing somebody about how to make $100,000 a year selling chickens. Is that right?
Yeah, that was Joel Salatin. So Joel's probably, in my opinion, the most famous farmer in the world, probably. He's a big name in what he does, and I have a lot of respect for him. It was nice to hear him push back on that point about farming and saying that, like, if you do this, you can start with, a $30,000 investment and turn it into, I think he said like $250K or $240K or something in your first year. Or maybe it was half that, 130, I don't know. But he seemed to think that there's like a plausible way. And his first step was actually, meat birds.
Mm-hmm. So you raise chickens and then you harvest them.
Exactly. I just find that it's all very dependent on a lot of things. For us, if we were to come out here and do that, we'd also have to build a house because it's barren land and we need to live somewhere. Whereas if you bought something that was 40-minute drive from town that you could go and check on your chickens and live where you're currently living, then you lower your upfront cost by a few $100,000. So that's obviously like a big part to play. I also look at long-term automation. I want the freedom. That's the whole point of our lifestyle here, is freedom, is to be able to come and go as we please. So with farming, I find that it's a lot more human management. It's a biological system. It's a little bit different than a rental unit system. I think a rental unit system is generally easier to operate. But that's kind of our whole purpose, is making all of those things easier to operate. And while there's lots of people selling programs on here's how to raise and sell chickens, that's fine. There's lots of that. Everybody can go find something like that. But I think what people need, and a little gap in the market right now for not just farming, but also for all of these types of projects, whether it's like raising funds to buy the real estate, or whether it's operating it once you get it and it's a rental center or whatever, is actually the hiring process, the systemizing process, and the management systems to be able to have that freedom, so you can manage it in 2 hours a week and be hands-free, so you can continue living your life or doing the things that you really enjoy. Oh,
that's cool. Okay, so let's talk about you mentioned bringing utilities to the property. That would kind of freak me out a little bit. Like, okay, what does that mean? How much is that going to cost? And you have to know how to run, wire and electricity and solar panels like that? And do you have to have a ton of batteries? So can you talk a little bit about what's involved with bringing utilities to a property?
Yeah, it's usually pretty simple. I think it involves a bit of assessment of the land before going in. Your number one concern is water. Always your number one concern is water. So generally the costs on that up in our area are anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000. That's in Canadian dollar. So yeah, I would say 10 to 20,000 US kind of thing to drill a well. And that doesn't include it usually doesn't include the well house. You want to usually have a little shed that the well comes up into, and then you install your well pump and your pressure tank. And you can you can almost always put your solar pack in the same house. So it's all like a mechanical room, essentially, in the middle of a field or wherever the fuck it gets drilled. And then, so the well side is pretty simple. I would say the biggest concern with the well is assessing the property before you buy it. So how we do that is you can ask for a water map from the county office, and they'll actually show you your neighbor's wells if they have any, and they'll show you how deep they are and that kind of thing. And then second is I go to all the local well drilling companies and I ask them about what they think of this area. And if they're good, they should remember drilling those people's wells, and they should be able to say, yeah, that one, there's X amount of feet to bedrock and the water quality is X and the gallons per minute is Y, and that type of information. So you really, really want that before going in and making a decision to actually purchase a property. And then that's the worst thing you could do, is buy a property without doing that research. Yeah. And then you go to drill a well and you spend 30 grand and you hit nothing. And now the next guy buying it knows that there's no water there, and now you can't even sell it. So that's a bad scenario. Yeah. We've had people come to us who have done that and then been freaking out asking for our help. And I'm like, you're kind of too late. It would have been better to make the investment up front to work with someone. I don't care if it's me, but just work with somebody.
Sure.
And then second thing on the well is there's actually a I'm trying to remember the name. I forget the name. Primary Water Technologies, I believe is what they're called. If you Google them, they've developed a technology that's kind of like, it's like a scan of the earth. It's like doing a what's that called that they do for like babies on like the mama's belly kind of
sonogram?
Yeah, something like that on the earth essentially. And what they're doing is they're pinpointing underground springs. So there's multiple layers in bedrock, and springs will come up but then stop there and just flow back into the bedrock. They won't reach the surface. So what these guys do is there's many of them all over the place. They locate that and then they tap it with the drill. So they drill down and they aim straight for it, and then you actually allow that spring to reach the surface. So they've had 95% accuracy rate of being able to hit those. And wow. It's an extra $4,000 for them to come out with a drone and survey the property and then give you the maps of where you should drill. So we've had clients that have done it in like Arizona, where otherwise there wouldn't be any water, and they've turned this property that is like, well, they haven't yet, but they have the potential to, now that they have a well, the potential to turn this property that's otherwise a desert into an absolute oasis. So you can take really cheap or affordable properties and bring life back to them, which I think is really, really cool. So it's a couple points on water.
I'm looking at the website, primarywatertechnologies.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the website's pretty like old looking. Yeah. But the guys are solid, and they're worth having a call with for sure. And then on the solar side, we've gotten screwed on solar. So we always tell people to beware of their neighborhood solar salesmen, because there's so many people who are kind of brokers. They're just sales guys that are just hawking cheap ass solar panels from China, and they don't know anything about the systems. And then the system they give you is like 12 different suppliers giving you a bunch of different stuff, and it's all designed out of house. And then you try and put it all together and you're just like, what is even going on? We needed 3 or 4 electricians to come in just to hook up our first one, because we bought it off of the neighborhood solar salesman. And I'm a third-year electrical apprentice, so I'm also not an idiot when looking at it. But it is confusing, and people don't electricians aren't educated about it. They're educated theoretically about some of it, like the transformation from DC to AC power kind of thing with solar, but we're not trained at all to actually install these systems. So we work with Hybrid Power Solutions. They're a Canadian company. They just went public. They're small public business. We've actually flown their guys out to do trainings on our property. And they are really good. And for people in the States, you actually might even get a deal because of the exchange rate. Because the exchange rate with it, it's already way more affordable than other stuff, but also you guys might benefit from the exchange rate. But that their power stuff comes in, it's much more buttoned up, so it's much more plug and play per se, where you can put it on the wall, plug some shit into it, and it works. And their customer service is better. They can monitor it from an app, so if something goes down, they can diagnose it from afar instead of having to call a bunch of electricians in to try and work it out. And price-wise, we basically paid 30% less for double the amount of power that we were getting off of the original system that we bought off the wrong guy. So we really love the work that they're doing. And some of their stuff is a full kitted solution, meaning it literally shows up like a generator. You put it on a pad or put it on the ground, and you plug it in. That's it. Like it's that simple with some of the stuff that they're building. So they're making it really user-friendly.
Yeah, I'm looking at their website. Hybrid, by the way, if you're listening to this or watching it on YouTube, we'll have all of the links to everything we're talking about here, and as well as how to get a hold of Jaymie in the description, or you can just comment below the video and we'll respond to your comment, all right? But yeah, I'm looking at their website, hybridps.ca, or I just Googled Hybrid Power Solutions and you'll find it. And they got a lot of different kits. The off-grid packages, the all-in-one, I'm assuming here ranges from $22,000 to $32,000. That would be for setting up a off-the-grid, what do they call it? Off-grid living. So they have different pricing for off-grid living, RV living, marine living, depending on the needs that you have or you want.
Yeah, and if you're going super basic, like if you want to start a glamping site and you just have a common area that has some amenities in it, so there'd be like we put 2 shipping containers down and we put a tent roof over it, super cheap and cheerful. We got an outdoor kitchen in there. We got we got a little sauna. It's a wood fire, and then we have some lights and Starlink for internet and that kind of thing. Place for people to charge their phones. If you want something like that, you could get away with a $10,000 power bank. So it can be pretty cheap. But the things that you're mentioning up for the 20, 30 grand, that's like if you want to pull a brand new custom tiny home, or you want to get a modular kit home just landed on site where you can live like a normal person. That's the level that you would want to go to for like the $20,000, $30,000 mark if you're like living there on site, or if you want to have more extensive cabins built out. And the thing I like about their systems is that a lot of them, you can have them designed so that you can plug them into one another. So let's say you start in phases, and the first phase is, hey, let's just get some glamping stuff and let's make some money off this property. And then we want to reinvest that money to build ourselves our dream home later. Well, you can just bolt onto that system, that same solar system, rather than buying a whole new one. And it saves you a lot of money in the long run. Wow.
Okay, nice. I wanted to ask you about the let's say somebody's just, they maybe have 100 grand to spend, and they can buy maybe a 10 to 20 acre property, smaller property, not as big as what you're talking about. They can buy it for maybe 50 grand, or maybe even buy it with owner financing. That's one of the things we do sometimes is we contact owners of properties, and we'll give them 2 prices. We'll give them a cash offer, which is pretty low, and we'll give them a higher price if they would carry back the financing. So let's say, you get a property, but you don't have a ton of cash. You want to turn that kind of a smaller property into something that generates income. Number one, would you recommend living on the property, on, a corner of the property, and kind of doing something with the rest of it? Or is it better to just live somewhere else and make this like your income producing property?
If you're starting with that low of funds, I think you're going to have a tough time living there. just because to comfortably live there, the unit you're living in is probably going to take up all of your budget. Let alone to actually build out the income generators. So if you only had that much in this theoretical scenario, and you had the ability to buy something closer to where you're living so that it was a driving distance away, or if you feel comfortable to have someone managing it on site, then you could do that too. We have lots of people doing that where they buy something halfway across the country and it's just managed. They just have a local person manage it. And the reason that works is because a lot of people are looking for live-work exchange opportunities. So the land is the hard part. If you have the land, then you have all the opportunity in the world to be able to do something with that. So there's lots of people in this tiny home movement that already have a nice home, but they just have nowhere to put it. So if you tell them, hey, I'll give you a free spot to put it, in exchange for 2-3 hours of work a day, after their day job, and then they just run the scene there.
Really,
that's totally viable. So if it were me and I had that amount of money, you'd be roughing it at first if you were to try and live there on your own. So I'd probably put that into the revenue generation and then allow that to generate income and then pay for a more comfortable place for myself to live. Or I would go buy the land and then I would use that land as leverage to go raise more capital to do it all at once, if that's what you wanted to do.
Okay. So I'm sure that's something you teach in the program too, how to raise capital. So raise it from private investors, from banks even. Is that possible?
Yeah, banks, private investors, family firms like B lenders and C lenders, crowdfunding options, things that we do like a little micro funding stuff as well. So there's some really cool options out there. So getting the land, if somebody has the money for the land or can get the money for the land, like that is by far that big hurdle, and it gives everybody so much more trust and credibility in you if you have that land. And after that, things are a lot easier. So a model that we're doing right now, actually, that we've had many clients do, is basically we are offering vacation rental units for people because we're tired of brushing snow off of our tents in the winter. We want to have some more, substantial structures here. So we're doing really unique structures. So right now in the fall, we're planning on building 2 tree houses as Airbnb rentals. And up here, one tree house like that is probably bringing in $100,000 a year. There's Hobbit homes and unique Airbnbs like that nearby. They're doing like $180,000 a year off of one unit. Wow. So we know that we can build that for like probably $60,000. Well, probably cheaper. We're hoping like between 40 and 60. So what we're doing is we're basically offering we'll double your money return to investors. So we're saying, hey, you give us 60 and we'll pay you out 25% of the rental income until we double your money. So it's capped at 120,000. So that works out to about an 8 to 10 year payback period with about a 12, depending on the year, 12 to 18% year over year return is what that works out. So it's a good investment for that person. Plus it's a vacation option for them and their family. They can come and use it for 2 weeks out of the year kind of deal. And then you do that, but you can increase a little bit. So if something's going to cost you $50,000 to build, sell it for 100. And then we're working basically like all on cash flow for this. So yeah, we have to pay them out 200, but that's cash flow. So it's whatever. So if you did that, but then you did it 10 times, well, now you've raised $1 million. And now you spend $500,000 building the units, and you have another $500K left over to install all the infrastructure on the property, like the power and the water and the amenities and the saunas and like whatever else you want. And we have a client that did this. His name's Jonathan England. He did this in Costa Rica. And as of last year, he raised $3.2 million. And he raised, I think he raised $2 million of that within the 2 months of me talking to him. So by now that might be well over $5 million that he's raised for that. So that's a cool option that I like, that doesn't involve you having to give any shares or ownership in your land or your business. And you can just buy them out and have buyback terms.
Well, yeah. And it's kind of like a loan also, but it's your payment plan is based on the rental income that's coming in. Right.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. And you also get cash flow because you get 75% of the income as a management fee that so that's all, portion of that's profit as well.
Now, in your program, do you teach people how to build those tree houses, or how to find the contractors to build them, and what's required of all of that?
Yeah, so we dive into a lot of structures. A lot of it is strategizing which structures, so how to know what to build, and then how to turn that, how to even strategize it around like minimum viable. Because a lot of people look at a treehouse and be like, that's gonna cost 300 grand. And what we show them is how to do it for 60. so that, because a $300,000 treehouse, you're gonna get, $300 a night, but a $60,000 treehouse, you're gonna get 250. So you may as well build 5 tree houses instead of one big one. Yeah. But also, so anytime we do something, we re-upload it, or even clients, a lot of our clients, they'll do something and we'll upload that into our program. So we actually have a full-time, actually this year, which is big news for us, we actually purchased a Elk Ridge Cabin Co., which is a modular home manufacturing business. So with that company, we have a full-time designer, part-time designer. So she actually comes in and does full 3D renderings that are like photorealistic, and she puts out all the plans that you need to submit to the city to get permits on these types of things. So when we do that, we put that into the course. So we're trying to make as much plug and play stuff. If you want that treehouse, you can take those drawings and you can submit them to the city to get permits and they're ready to go, or you can take them and you can give them to a construction company and get quotes from a bunch of different people. So we try and make it as plug and play and templated as possible.
Yeah, that's so cool. Especially at the very beginning of this interview, you talked about you've mapped out the entire U.S. and the counties and the areas in the counties that have no zoning restrictions, or it's easier to build stuff on there, right? That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. The no zoning stuff, it's definitely not everywhere. But we found it in most states, so it was more abundant than we expected.
Yeah. And a lot of times too, when we're pulling lists for vacant land, you can remove properties that are in HOAs by simply just looking for properties that are above a certain number of acres, right?
Yeah.
If you just target 10 plus acres when you're pulling your list for your marketing, most of those are not going to be have those kinds of restrictions, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, once you get out into those other areas, into those more rural areas, it starts to be a lot more freedom.
Yeah. What do you teach your audience, your people, to how to find the land?
Yeah, so how to find it, we start from a high level and we try and funnel people down. And a lot of this is a lot of our clients are taking in more personal stuff than I think what some of your audience might be from like a specific investment perspective. A lot of our clients, like, they want to live on these properties and build their dream lives there and that type of thing. So, when we start helping people locate the region that's best for them, we start at a high level. For example, we'll say, okay, what do you want to grow food? If you want to grow food, what do you want to grow? If you want to grow avocados, well, you're not going to be buying land in Canada. You're probably going to be buying land somewhere farther south. Do you like what type of climate do you like? And that includes political climate. Some states might not be for you. So that is something that helps somebody find their whereabouts in the world and in a country in the world. And then from there, then you want to go down into what size acreage do you want? And then you want to go down into kind of the rule of thumb of what distances do you want from population densities. So we like to be within 30-40 minutes of a small town, meaning that you can get fuel there. Hopefully you get a bit of food. If you're lucky, there might be a lumber yard or something. And then we like to be within 2 hours of a city, meaning a place that has everything you could need. It has dealerships for equipment. It has specialized tooling and whatever it might be, that if something breaks and you need a piece or a part for it, you can go there and for certain that they're going to have it. That's kind of how we identify what a city means. So then you could actually start drawing circles around major cities and around small towns and start seeing where they overlap. And then from there, then you want to go in and you want to know what you're doing with it first. Because if you don't know what you're doing with the land, you can't possibly know what land is right for you. If you want to have, 30 rentals, that has very different water needs than something that has 5 rentals. If you want to have a hobby farm, that's very different land zoning than something that is a 30 family home community. So we have such a diversity of clients with what they want to do and what they envision for these properties that we really help them. We have to first help them go through, what's the plan here? And then you can work backwards and find the property that's right for that plan. And then from there, we'll get into land zoning that's specific to that plan and so on and so forth.
Have you found, because I've always bought land just with my own capital or with private investors. Sometimes I'll get the owners to carry back financing, right? But are there banks that you and your clients are finding that will lend money on land if you're turning it into a business?
Not really. It's pretty tough. We go mostly private. Banks are great. Like we usually do a mix of private with banks. So somebody will come in and put the down payment on, and then co-sign for the mortgage. And then they'll also give money on top to actually build the infrastructure out. And there'll be a partial owner. There'll be a partner in both the land asset and the business asset. So that's kind of the common structure that we're seeing. So it's a mix of both. But no, I mean, I am just, honestly, personally, I'm just really tired of going to banks and putting all this stuff together and putting so much time and effort into it. It's kind of like going for a grant. Yeah. You go in and you're just like, they just have such strict protocols and terms and all this stuff where they just run you through like a cog in the system. And I'm just tired of getting rejected by doing that. So that's why we've just gone private, because private, you have control over it. Like you can convince the other person sitting on the other side of the desk. It's not just a big institution. So I've just enjoyed that route more. Yeah. So we focus more on that.
Couple more questions. When you do pick the area you want, right? How are you telling people to go find those landowners? How are they pulling the lists? How are you reaching out to them?
A lot of people are actually looking for investors first, and then they're just buying on market real estate. Like they're just going to the person and just straight up just buying it with use of an investor and the investor helping them with the mortgage. Okay. In rare cases for cheaper lots, the investors will just pay for it up front. But yeah, we have had a lot of owner financing stuff as well. And a lot of people find those on market too. Honestly, they just go and I think the unique thing about this is that people have such goodness in their hearts for what they want to do with these properties. They want to build things into a family legacy. So when you're approaching it, I think our clients have an upper hand almost because they're going into it and they're going into it talking to somebody who bought this property maybe for pennies on the dollar, and now their kids live in the city. They don't want nothing to do with this property anymore. And our clients are coming in and be like, look, we don't want BlackRock or some conglomerate to come and scoop this up and plant crickets everywhere. Like we want to actually do something with this and reinvigorate the soil and just really bring life back to this and turn it into something awesome. And that has worked wonders. Like we've had clients that have walked in to a $1.2 million property, and just because they got to chat personally with the owner. So we always recommend bypassing real estate agents and really talking to someone, and they'll go in, and this was an example. FJ, a client, and now like he's a part of our community, but also now a friend. He went in and he's in Pennsylvania. It was a $1.2 million property. Talked to the owner, told her his vision. She brought it down from 1.2 to 800,000. So gave 400 grand off the property, and also gave him $200,000 worth of heavy equipment, tractor, bulldozer, a bunch of like lawnmower, bunch of hand tools, all ready to rock, to go maintain that property. So we got 6 600 grand worth of extra value just from like telling that personal story. But we do also do what you're talking about, and run stuff through off market deals and send massive cold email blasts, and we're getting into the physical sending as well. We're actually taking your course on that to get better at it. Nice.
Like direct mail, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it too, how you have a much better angle with the sellers from an emotional standpoint. You're not just some rich investor who's trying to make a quick buck. You want to turn this into a legacy. You want to turn this into a family business. You want to turn this into to bring people there to enjoy the land. I would imagine as an owner of a piece of land, like that would be much more appealing, and I'd be much more willing to help you out. That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I got so many more questions, but you cover this all in your program, right? So you tell us a little bit about your program, and the link for the program, guys, will be in the description of this video, or just go, like if you're listening to this on an audio podcast, go to my YouTube channel. We're still trying to figure out the link right now. But just comment below the video and I'll send you the link, or look in the description down below. But talk about your program, Jaymie. What is that and how does it work?
Yeah, so it's an online course paired with some group stuff. So we have Telegram group chats and Facebook group stuff, so you can ask questions and whatnot. We have a VIP option for you to have calls with me twice a month. So we chat about it all and you can lay it all out. But the program goes through everything we've walked through today, from how to assess and find these properties, how to figure out and decide what you want to do with it in a logical way that's going to make financial sense. We kind of have this saying where you can do everything you want, but what you start with matters. Because if you go spend $1 million on a farm, that's only going to make you 200 grand a year. 5 years later, you're going to go bankrupt. So we help people really strategize that, and even just blow people's minds with what is even possible, because a lot of people don't even know what options there are to make money on the land, or what you can do with different properties in different ecosystems and climates. And all the funding routes. We go through about 12 different funding methods, because everybody's projects are different. So there's lots of different things in there and different routes that you can take. And we want to help you customize that in a way that's unique for your vision, and help you plot that path to get there. And a big part of it is trying to fill you with all the templates that you need to help go do this. So everything we do and we have executed on, you get. So we have full it comes with a free business plan package that has business plan templates that are pre-filled out with real life numbers that we have used to do this and go raise the money from investors to do this, including like financial projections, including 4 different pitch decks that are catered to specific things, whether you want to start a rental business, a glamping business, a farm, a tiny home rental community, all of that stuff. It's all pre-built in there, so you can just add a couple photos, make it your own, put your team in there, and have a go. And then other things that we've mentioned here, like the no zoning map of North America, and honestly just a lot of really good support as well. We have 8,000 people all kind of being very collaborative and putting everything they're finding back into a big resource list, so that we can all benefit, such as that well example where you can tap into the heads of underground springs, things like that, but times that by 1,000 is pretty much what the program offers.
Nice. And we're going to be, if you're on my email list too, we're going to be emailing everybody links to get more information from Jaymie on how all of this stuff works. Jaymie, thank you so much for being on the podcast, man. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you're doing. You're changing lives.
Yeah, man. Cool. One more thing too. Do you have YouTube, Instagram? Where do you have your socials at?
Mostly Instagram, but we're on everything, so you can find it anywhere. It's Living the Off-Grid Dream. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Our email list is the best and most active spot though. So if you click the link below wherever you're listening or seeing this, and get in on that and just put your email in any funnel anywhere on any of our websites, you'll get into the email list. Nice. I personally write to the email list a few times a week with what I try and make make very high value, very actionable things, and also just very personal stuff, so you can really see behind the scenes. So our email list is the best spot to be. Nice.
Good. Jaymie, thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to working with you some more in the future.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Right. We'll see you guys all later. Bye-bye.